at the end of the day, I work in a customer environment with people and they're the same, right? Customers are customers. We all know what it feels like to be a customer. So we all kind of know what we need to expect from the organizations that we interface with. Where do we play as humans and how do we contribute, complement, work with technology in the way in the future that actually just brings the best of both?
Welcome to our change, Kate, or I should say welcome back.
Thank you. So looks very different.
For those watching and listening, there is a story. So Kate was our third guest. The first one that we were going to do flying solo without Andy Shoutout, who was doing all of the AV. And it's safe to say we had so much to learn. And so, as you can probably tell, the mic setup, kit, space looks very different. So I think Belma and I loved the conversation we had with you. Thought it was super insightful. And while the content was great, I don't think the edit would have done you justice. So thank you so much for coming back.
Yes.
As a brief intro, so 20 years change, transformation, leadership, telco, financial services, recently into a new role, lots going on, moved house, just everything that you could probably, turn over in life is all changing and transforming around you. So maybe not a better place to kick off with. But I wonder if maybe we could hand over to just as a whistle-stop tour of your career and background, and then we can start to get into the pod.
Sure. So I don't think I ever planned to get into change. It wasn't ever on the plan that I was going to go into that kind of work because I probably didn't even know it existed in the form that it did. So I started out in customer services many moons ago. And actually, in them days, lots of things were happening in the contact center environment. Lots of centralization was going on at that time. And if you stood close enough to it, you kind of got involved.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of got involved in projects. And that hook into projects then just kept moving. If it wasn't that, the first project might have been about the contact center I was in. And then actually, I know someone that's doing something like that. You could be useful at that. And so I just followed the path that was there for me and available for me to get into, and ended up doing huge amounts of transformation at Virgin, working in their contact customer group, and essentially getting involved in technology. So ultimately getting in technology to a place where I understood the kind of capabilities that frontline operations needed to use, and actually how that could benefit them, both in terms of customer, but also in terms of the user. So then kind of took a real hard look at what I was doing and where I was going with life, took a big risk, changed industry, decided to change industry, tried to do something that was much more local to my community and where I was living. And I went into financial services. Huge shock to the system. From a kind of telecommunications background going into financial services, took a lot of learning. But actually, at the end of the day, I work in a customer environment with people and they're the same, right? Customers are customers. We all know what it feels like to be a customer. So we all kind of know what we need to expect from the organizations that we interface with. So actually, whilst the product is different, and yes, the setup and the regulation is very different, the reality of the heart of that, about what it means to be, what service means, is kind of universal. So that brings me to you.
Super. So just before we start, you said, are all of the answers the same or different? So I always ask this question. When you were leaving school, uni, sitting with your careers officer, did you set out to be a leader in technology?
No, Well, I won't reveal how old I am, but actually, when I was at college, I didn't go to university. So when I was at college, we had to fill in a questionnaire.
Yeah.
And the questionnaire, you filled in all these questionnaires. And actually it said I was going to be a probation officer.
Okay.
To which I actually didn't know what a probation officer was back then either. But clearly that's not the path I followed.
Probably some similarities of being a probation officer and technology leader, I'm sure. But so it seems like you have been in change since sort of the beginning of your career. And even with changing industries, that's an element of change. And there is that saying that the only thing that remains constant is change. But throughout your journey, what would you say were some of the most critical skills that have enabled you, that you've picked up or that you've learned that have enabled you to be successful in your role or roles?
I think the most long-standing one that I think when I look back has served me right from the beginning and all the way and still is serving me now, and I guess will serve me for many more years, is actually what is great customer service. What is it? What does it feel like to be on the end of great customer service? And actually, how can you provide that? Because that is relevant for internal customers, external customers. And actually, when you're doing change and you bring it back to that lens, so much of change is bringing people with you and knowing how to communicate, connect with people, understand what's in it for them. If you can't do that, that's a really tough gig.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that's been one of the things that, although quite underestimated, I think is probably one of the things that's really served me well. And actually, I've been talking to some people quite recently and in my team and kind of saying, you don't necessarily need to know about all the policies, all of the practices of change to be able to be great at it. What sometimes you need to do is you just need to stand in somebody else's shoes who you're serving and say, what will that feel like for me? And actually, how can I serve them best?
Yeah.
Are these skills that you would say were natural to you? So a previous guest, I really cottoned on the fact I was great with people, probably a bit less interested in the tech. I just figured out I was great with people. Did you notice that early on in your career and you've honed those, or is it something that you've worked at?
I don't think I ever really valued it.
Okay.
So I thought everyone just did that. It took me a while to get to a place where I thought, actually, you're not very good at that, are you? I'm actually quite good at that. I hadn't seen it as a strength.
Right, okay.
So I hadn't recognised it, I hadn't valued it. I think, and I see that that's probably one of the traits I think that as probably one of my big learnings in life is that actually the things that are natural to me, I've never valued enough. I've looked at other people and gone, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to be great at that because there's an expectation that because it's natural to you, it's not as valuable. Yeah. But actually, as one of the real key pieces for me was celebrating some of those things and learning that actually that's one of the things I'm great at. I can't say that that's driven my path, if I'm honest. I haven't said until now.
Okay.
Which is really interesting because that hasn't driven my path at all. And I've followed whatever has been in front of me. But actually, I've made a conscious decision quite recently to actually just do stuff I love.
Okay.
And when I sat back and think about the things that I love, it all comes back to the intersection between people, change, customer.
Okay.
So actually, it kind of spearheaded my focus and intent to land something that had that intersection. So I've actually used it in a more dynamic way.
Yeah.
More recently. Wish I'd known that when I was 25. But actually, I wouldn't perhaps have learned all those things about me had I not experienced the breadth of things that I've been involved in.
So more practically speaking, so you're in a new role, helping Leeds Building Society undergo a huge change and transformation. So what are kind of some of the first things that you will do in order to make sure that you've kind of achieved the goal of bringing everybody on board?
Yeah, so I think I'm really new into the role. So I'm still trying to gather all of my thoughts about it. But actually what we're trying to really galvanise is what do we need to do? What needs to be true for it to be really successful?
Okay.
So we're trying to articulate at this point in time what are the key elements that would really feel like success of the investment. And ultimately, and part of that is really understanding how we connect impact, the people that we're about to influence and impact, how do we connect them to the journey? How do we connect them to the bigger picture? How do they get a say and in what happens next? So big piece of work to do in terms of engagement, but also to recognize these are the things that are going to transform the way you do things. And then what does that mean as individuals? Because actually that will give you the opportunity to test different skills, to, generate a different kind of value from the work that you do. So actually it's about really driving out, what does it mean for those individuals involved? How do we make sure that the next journey is really meaningful for you and the work that you do is really meaningful for you? Because nobody comes to work just because. Everybody wants to come to work and add value and do something that they think is worthwhile.
I've got huge, but 99.9% to go to work to do a good job. It's that innate purpose in life. You need shelter, you need to have that security and value. And people normally go and, we sit, fortunately now, with a lot of people who are leading change or spearheading change or going through it or reflecting on it. And actually the what does it mean to you question is coming up more. Like, how do we understand, yes, it's going to be impactful to the business for good, bad revenue reasons, but actually to you as an individual, what's it mean to you? How do we bring you along on that journey? How do you approach that at the beginning? What are you looking for as you look across a team or a business, not specifically these, but just at a conceptual level? What are you looking for in terms of the detractors, your superheroes who are absolutely on board? What traits are you looking for?
I think the first thing I'm looking for is, what are people fearful of?
Okay.
Because that, we have to dispel that.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, what are people worrying about?
Yeah.
Because actually we need to put plans in place and we need to start talking about things or around subjects that actually start to kind of bust those myths. Okay. That's key for me, is trying to work that out, and then I want to go for, what's the art of the possible?
Yeah.
Right.
What's the opportunity that it brings? Can we envisage what that looks like, feels like? Yeah. What will that bring for you personally? So there's so much opportunity. With big change comes so much opportunity for people. And we can hide from that and pretend it's not happening, or we can embrace it and think about, what does that give me?
Yeah.
And where will I land at the end of this? I'll have got all of this experience, in doing this kind of work. Equally, I might have the opportunity to influence the journey of that too. So for me, it's about, how do I get people not scared of change?
Okay.
Also, how do I get them excited about what's possible?
I love that, because it sounds like you're being very, very thoughtful around and taking your time around linking the strategy to kind of the practical application in everyday life for each team member. And I completely recognize the fact that there are people who would feel afraid when it comes to, when it comes to some sort of change happening, whether it's an automation, what does this mean for my job? Whether it's a change in process, again, what does this mean for me and my team? How do you work with those teams to inspire them to see the art of the possible? It would be really interesting to understand a bit more. How do you get people on board, really?
Well, sometimes it can feel as if you're trying to paint a picture of something that might not ever happen.
Yeah.
And largely, it won't ever look like that.
Yeah.
I remember when I was at school, I kind of had to write a story about what life will be like in 2020. And I found it, right? In 2020, I found this school book. And in it, it said, everybody will be on a hoverboard. So, but actually, I wrote that 50 years ago, you know? So actually, you kind of go, okay, it's not exactly like that, but there's a different kind of reality that's not that far away from some of that stuff. But it's almost about, how can you envisage the future? And even though it might not look like that, it's opening people's minds to what could be.
Yeah.
I think there's a great intersection as well that I think is not really, is underplayed right now. So we're all talking about AI and we're all talking about what automation brings. But actually, where does human capital play alongside technology? So it's that intersection. And if we don't celebrate that and work out that computers can do loads of stuff, they can't do everything.
Yeah.
Right? So where do we play as humans, and how do we contribute, complement, work with technology in the way in the future that actually just brings the best of both?
I think you're right. I think a lot of fear at the moment. So quite a lot of businesses, or quite a lot of people that we speak to, it's not that AI is going to replace my job wholesale, but but that we have the lens. We deal with a lot of technologists who can probably see that this is that they're going to have. There's going to be a human in the loop in some respects, but in an organisation that will have a lot of people who are not in the technology function, and we've got plenty of them. There is absolutely a divide at the moment between the data and analytics team and the supply chain team, or the data and analytics team and the finance team, or the data and analytics team and the manufacturing plant. How do you go about at an org? Because I know you just at the moment the role is responsible for organizational readiness, business readiness. Yeah. How do you go about ensuring that everyone understands that there is a role for them to play? Yes, it may look a bit different, but this is an enabler, not we are coming to take your job.
Yeah. And I think some of that is about asking them. So for me, if I could paint the picture for somebody about their role and go, okay, here's some capability that's going to land, and therefore this is going to replace some of the work that you do. Well, how could we amplify your role to actually drive more value?
Yeah.
If you didn't have to do X, Y, Z of turning handle stuff, right? What would you do with your time?
Yeah.
Though the people that do the job will know exactly what they want to get after. Yeah. I can't tell them because I don't do their job, but they could tell me that if they had the capacity and the bandwidth, well, we'd love to do that. I just need to create the space for them to imagine it.
We had a great guest, Rich, earlier, and it was the DWP who were receiving 22,000 letters a day. The majority of them were telephone number changes, address changes, benefits changes, and all of it was a very simple, either how many digits from a telephone number, 11-digit phone number, or hours of work had changed, and that alters the amount of benefits that you get. And so the question was, you know that AI can just read these and automatically process it. What would you do? I would love to pick up the phone to the people coming out of prison. Right, where are you going to land? How can we help you? Okay, so you've just increased your job, or the amount of hours you're doing. That's amazing, right? So that changes this, but it also allows you access to this. Whereas at the moment, it was such a manual process of 0740. I totally get that. And I think you're right. When you give people, to go back to the point around, what do you want to do? What will give you the most enjoyment? I want to add value to the customer, to the business. I want to create more of this. We could look at that. But actually, I'm bogged down by these 22,000 letters. It's stuck in my mind that.
They can work out how they reinvest their time.
Yeah.
So as long as they understand the purpose of their role and the value that it needs to bring to the organization. So that needs to be clear, because they can't go off and do something else, right? We'll go and play darts for 2 hours or whatever, right?
I'll still get paid.
But, so you kind of got to get, as long as we're really clear about the purpose of the role and the value that it needs to bring and generate, they will find how they could reinvest their time if they had space to be able to do something different.
Yeah.
They will come up with the ideas. And actually, more often than that, you kind of talk about the differentiator. It's great that, as a customer, we've gotten all these new different experiences now. Everything's easy and accessible. But not everybody finds that easy.
Yeah.
Not everybody finds that world really easy. We've got a huge demographic that's struggling with how to manage kind of the digital age and those different capabilities. So how do we segment, kind of use different techniques and opportunities to reach out to different customers and serve them in the way that they want to be served? So I think there's lots of different opportunities, but actually we've kind of homogenized everything, centralized everything. That's what we used to do. That's how you serve it. I mean, you put this overarching layer of this is how we service you. If we get the time and space, we can start to differentiate between them.
Do you think everybody can be brought on board with a strategy or a change direction in terms of an organization? I mean, do you think everybody can go on the journey, or do you think there are sometimes times when actually this just no longer is the journey for them? How do you manage the distinctions and way forward with that? Yeah.
I would like to think that everybody can go on the journey if they want to go on the journey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the differentiator.
It's up to them.
If they've got the will, then actually, I think largely we're in a position to be able to provide the mechanism to show them how to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. But actually, there will be times when that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And we will be having conversations with people that says, actually, that's not the right path for me.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe it is time to part company. Those things happen.
Yeah.
People make different choices. But actually, I think the important part is that they recognize it's a choice they are making, and that actually we deal with that in a dignified way. Then that happens. That is life.
Yeah. Sounds like empowering your teams to make the decisions for themselves, to understand kind of the impact of the changes and the opportunities within it is part of your playbook then, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, that's not my style. Firstly, it definitely isn't my style. I like to collaborate with people. I want to find the pathway that suits most people. That is the person that I am. Sometimes that doesn't always work. And we will need to have agree to disagree about something. But in reality, if we can harvest the strength and the power of all of that group, then that is always a better outcome than trying to enforce or impose a position on a group of people.
I'd like to touch on the power of collaboration, actually, because I don't think it's something that we have necessarily covered specifically it's not really come up in that way. I think in a roundabout way, indirect way, we can probably deduce from the conversations that it's important. But like, how do you achieve collaboration within your team? So, and this is kind of a very playbook, practical question, if that makes sense. So what's like the first thing that you do if there isn't a collaborative environment? How do you achieve one?
I think it's less about just my team, more about who in the organization can bring that thought process to the party. So it's about collecting that diverse thought from different areas. Who's got a vested interest in this conversation? Who needs to be on board? Because actually, if they are part and parcel of designing the solution, then it's an easier one to execute, right? So my thought process always is to just bring those people in to the conversation about, we're thinking about doing this. It would be really good to get your input. Let's set up a session. Let's get people together, find out the right people, make sure we agree and work through what the problem is. So it feels real common sense to me. I know that's not, but I think that's because I'm quite a people person. I know I won't have all the ideas on my own. In fact, I know I need a thinking partner. So it really benefits me to work with other people because I will thrive and breed off of other people's thinking process. So that's my preferred style. So maybe that's why it's easier for me. But yeah, absolutely reaching out and making sure you involve the right people. And even if they're not the right people, sometimes they're just a great mind to have in the room, right? And go, actually come in because I know you're going to challenge it. And that's what we need. We need somebody who's actually going to be difficult and kind of say, why would that work?
I was just going to, do you get a tactical detractor? Do you think, okay, you could be a bit of a problem further down the line. You've got a particular way of doing things. You like the status quo. You're not really invested in what I'm doing. Do you think about that strategic detractor and go, well, why don't you come into this session that's not necessarily right now, but in 6 months, if you're with us, you could.
Well, I think as naturally as a change project person, your instinct is to think forward. So you have to think about the bumps in the road. And how you can get rid of them earlier. You have to think about how you smooth that out. And actually that includes people that you think could derail the situation. There is a 0 point in finessing something to a point of perfection. And then you get to that bump and it actually falls apart. Because that's just a huge amount of rework. I'm a super efficient individual too. So I like to think that's such a waste. I don't like that. So I would be thinking about actually who do we need to get on board now?
And also,
because even if it's not their thing and even if it's not the and not a clear stakeholder in it, but actually bringing them into it to kind of get their input. Often it's people just want input, right?
Yeah.
They just want to know that they've had an opportunity to influence, input their point of view into something. And actually, sometimes they don't have one to give. And sometimes they have lots to give. And that doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
You've done that work and you've given people the opportunity and you've engaged them. And that's often why people are resistant.
Thinking about some of the biggest changes and transformations that you've been involved in, are there ones that stand out in your mind as real flagships of your career for challenge, size, scale, breadth, learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about my work that I was doing across in pan-European technology space, we were working with 12 independent markets and trying to do a single vendor selection. They were all at different levels of maturity. They all had their own strategies, but actually they had to come together as a group. And that's not something that was normal or natural for them because they were all their own, they were leaders in their own fields. So that was a challenge in terms of, on paper, that was a challenge. Yeah. In actual fact, it became a joy because actually they found new connections, new ways of working, almost a bit of trailblazing about how it could work.
Okay.
The other kind, it could kind of leak into other divisions and to be used in that way. But notwithstanding that, at the beginning, that was, oh, wow, this is going to be tough. And there was a lot of work that we needed to do to be able to listen to everybody, understand their position, make sure we'd represented their position, and everybody had an equal say.
Okay.
So how do we bring that group together? Met with them on a regular basis, really spent time. I was part of a team of people who we lived and breathed this kind of project for many, many months and spent a lot of time working not just on the plans and the kind of technical aspects of the change project, but actually much more about the human connections, finding the right spirit in the team, and really galvanizing that. And it was just one of the most joyous periods actually of my career that I've had. I think on Facebook it comes up with a time hop, doesn't it, every now and again that kind of says. And actually there was one day that we kind of managed to get everything signed off, business case all signed off, and it was such a big milestone. I'd kind of written on my Facebook account that this is just one of them days when all the stars line up. And it was just wonderful. And it was a really, really, really fabulous time. So what started off as a big, wow, this is going to be difficult, ended up being something I'm really proud of.
So again, it sounds like collaboration was a very big part of that. And maybe something that, would have been a massive challenge for somebody who isn't as collaborative as you. It seems like collaboration is your go-to, really. Do you think collaboration's made easier or more difficult with our online way of working? And, because I think I work with clients all over and I find that face-to-face time is really valuable. But with this project, because it was 12 different countries, was some of it done online? Was it done in face-to-face? Like what are your thoughts
combination. So there was a lot of traveling across Europe. There was a lot of evenings where we went out for dinner. That was fabulous.
For worse things.
In some wonderful restaurants that I probably would never have come across had I not kind of known these individuals. Yeah, but equally we had to spend a lot of time virtually as well.
Yeah.
So I think that was the time we were invested in making sure we spent time together on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So that we did have physically in the same space.
Okay.
But actually every week we were talking virtually.
Yeah.
Right.
Relationships take time.
They do, yeah.
And they don't build just over a Teams meeting when you're talking about project plans.
Yeah.
They build through conversations that you have when you're getting coffee, when when you're talking to somebody about their personal life, when you're trying to understand what's important to them about what they're doing right now at work.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things, those conversations don't come out from a standing agenda.
Yeah.
So actually it was important to create those spaces for that.
Reminds me of got part of a group of colleagues from previous roles that I've had, and We were just talking about all the watering holes that we used to frequent in Canary Wharf, and it's like one of them was there last night, like all getting PTSD from, but literally we would, go to the pub after work and have a chat, and you really, you do strengthen bonds that way, I think.
Yeah, it is a real, we underestimate it.
Yeah.
Sounds like a jolly.
Yeah.
The reality of it is you're just working, but through a different lens.
Yeah.
Totally. And in terms of the challenges that you inevitably faced on that program, can you talk us through how you approached a really difficult occasion or a difficult piece of work or a difficult stage of the project? And I guess in reflection, the traits that you deployed or the traits that you witnessed the team deploy to overcome that, for it to be that moment in time going, because the moment in time will absolutely mask, wow, that was a really difficult week. That was a really difficult time of the program.
So I think the group were all very well-established leaders in their own right.
Yeah.
In their own right. And within that group, there was a clear skeptic.
Okay.
He was finance. He came from a financial background, and, rightly so, because there were a lot of us doing lots of slideshows. Yeah. And actually, you could kind of tell that there was he was reserved about his feeling about it. So we brought him in as sponsor and went, could you come and sponsor this piece of work? Help us get it to a place that you would feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And when we engaged him in that, he taught us loads.
Okay.
So it was a brilliant move because I kind of learned lots from him. And actually, when he came in, he started to go, actually, what I would like to see is if you gave us this kind of information.
Okay.
And when we kind of broke that down and we started to build that, not only had we not done that sort of work before, so actually we were learning something as we went, but actually we were satisfying what he needed to come into the tent fully. It was a moment when someone said, actually, why don't we do that? We were all a little fearful about, is this actually going to work? or are we just going to get shouted at? But actually, he was super accommodating. We bonded over snooker. And he became a real ally, a real confidant, somebody who I would regard as a mentor as a result of that interaction. So just amazing what you assume about people and then actually what the real person is and actually what you can gain from that is massive.
Yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily a detractor. It's just a different point of view that you're not seeing actually. Yeah.
So you both sort of mentioned, and I think most people know that people believe in like a collection of people and call it a network or whatever that are really pivotal, that you go back to and lean on. You know that they've helped you. Hopefully you've helped them, but that you really trust, I guess. Is that something that you would say is something that you've purposefully collected over the time, Kate? Or is it something that you've accidentally collected? And is that something that's important to you?
I think I've had definitely different people through my career for different reasons.
Okay.
Actually, I've got a whole cohort of people who've been my champions.
Right.
And who I still connect with. We're still friends.
Yeah.
And I will be forever grateful for them kind of pulling me along a bit when I was a bit like, actually, I'm not sure I can do this. But they were champions of my career and have been brilliant at propelling me to where I am today. But then equally more recently, I think I've been more alive to what I've needed to do outside of a workspace. And I've never been really very comfortable about going to network events. It always felt a little like a show pony moment. And that's really not me. And then I thought, I don't know how to behave.
Yeah.
I don't know how to behave at these events. I'm not actually sure I've got anything worth listening to, what to say that people want to listen to, because I hadn't embraced that. And I, mostly a lot of those things, someone's been trying to sell to me. So you can spot the salesman's a mile away, can't you? Yeah. Right. Actually, that's been quite a new thing for me. But what was really interesting about, I've taken some time out in between jobs. And I really spent some time thinking about what I want to invest in and how I want to really kind of do what I want to do for the rest of my working career, really, rather than what I think I have to do.
Sure.
So I'm following what I think is right, not perhaps what other people might go, oh, that's a very different move. I don't really care.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. So, and during that process, I've been absolutely amazed by people's generosity.
Okay.
And have been networking with people. Gosh, I've watched some podcasts and go, oh, that's really interesting. I think I might reach out to that person and have a chat.
Yeah.
That has opened more doors than you could ever imagine. The generosity of people to kind of go, yeah, I'm happy to have a chat with you about that. Like, I just want to dig into a bit more about this subject. And there are lots of people out there doing that. So I'm absolutely want to pay that forward as well.
Yeah.
And part of this actually is a bit about paying some of that forward, because there are people out there that are in between jobs, not sure what they want to do, trying to understand more about certain areas and aspects that interest them. And actually, if we can just have a conversation with them without any intent or any need to kind of gain anything from it, that's a really powerful thing. So I think actually what I've done is learn that network has been super powerful for me, and definitely some of them will be mainstays.
Yeah. And they become friends.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the interesting thing. I'm with you. I don't, obviously, since we started to work digital, like, there's been an encouragement. Can you go and stand on the stage and, you know, say some stuff? And I'm like, no one's going to hear what I've got to say. We've got far better people here. Trust me. You go and do it. And then whether or not people are interested in what I've got to say, but the 4 or 5 people who are invariably on the panel, like, that's so the chap who I mentioned, Rich, like, so from his team, the director of AI, it's like, I'm just interested as to which partner you used to put the 22,000 document reader. Can you just how does that work? So, guess what? They're super proud of it. So they can't wait to tell you about it. We do, as you can imagine, loads of document referencing, CVs. That's like, there's got to be something that we can learn here. I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're never going to buy your application, so don't worry about it. But 20 minutes, half an hour, no problem. And then you're going to go, oh, you're really interesting. I quite like you. And then guess what? You can keep in touch. It's not a million miles away. And in terms of the networking events, I think not an intermission, but you've got 2 audiences. You've sort of got the folks who are like you in the senior leadership roles, what are your approaches? But for the folks who are a bit earlier on in their career, is it something you wish you'd have done earlier? Good
question. I wouldn't have known where to start.
Okay.
Really. So I think there's a call to action for the leaders in this kind of, in those positions, to encourage more of it.
Yeah.
It's one of the things actually that I've kind of put down as a bit of an objective for myself this year, for my team. In my current role, to kind of really think about how am I exposing them to those places and those networks, because I think it's really important to get comfortable. And it's not about, you will learn a lot of things. You will learn something from whatever the key topics are anyway, but you'll meet other people that you can go, actually, you're doing that, I'm doing that. Why don't we just get our heads together and just talk about how you're doing it? Because I'm going to learn something in the process. And actually, especially if you find somebody that's on that journey, the same sort of journey as you can get together and problem solve and collaborate that way. So people are generally quite happy about sharing those sorts of things. Obviously, there's some industry, related, sector related kind of lines around borders that you need to be mindful of, and information that you share. But that said, there's lots of things that, especially where you might kind of go, I don't know a great deal about that subject, and actually everybody else seems to. And it's a way of learning, and I want people to think about it as part of their development, not their learning and development and growth, not just actually I'm going to a network event to be seen.
I think all of us can kind of look back at our career and sort of see a journey of growth. And you talked about mentors being super important to help you overcome some of what you thought were weaknesses, where actually they saw strengths.
Yeah.
So, the importance of being surrounded by people who see your potential, who are able to push you towards it, it's invaluable, really. And I think the last time we had this conversation, we talked about kind of imposter syndrome as part of that.
I'll put my book away because I'll write that down. Hold on.
Do you want to finish off the question there?
To almost finish your sentence, but so
Yeah.
last time I thought what was really interesting, and it's touched on from the going to the events, and I'll speak for myself. Why do you want to listen to me? Why? Trust me, you're far more intelligent and more charismatic and better put together. You'll have far more interesting things to say. So why am I standing up there? And I think, and I don't want to actually put words in, but there was a bit around imposter syndrome and a little bit around, as the teams got bigger, the roles and responsibilities got bigger, the platform that you were stood on was getting bigger, the rooms that you were finding yourself in were at a more strategic level and a different group of people, and there was different pressures and responsibilities. And can you pick up where I'm going to leave? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth. There was bits around there where you felt, wow, that room's got really serious really quickly. This role's got really serious really quickly.
How did you overcome some of those?
Thank you. We've managed to cobble together a question. I've put my book away and we've got a question. Well done.
I don't know if I ever get rid of imposter syndrome. I think it doesn't go away permanently. It regularly comes back when you kind of in situations that you go, actually, I'm not quite sure that I'm supposed to be the person here. Am I the most qualified person here to talk about that? Really? And then you find that you are. And then you go, okay. I think there's something, I guess the way I'm managing that in my mind is when I find myself in those places, and this a bit like today, a bit like today or one of the other events when you're speaking on a panel or whatever that is, it's about paying it forward.
Yeah.
So I have to find the purpose in it. The purpose has to connect to me, it has to feel authentic. It needs to feel like I'm doing it for a reason. And if I can relate that reason for somebody else's benefit, it's so much easier. Because actually I'm kind of saying, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this because this is about what I'm sharing will help someone else.
Yeah.
And that helps me.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's for me, that's a real good lever. And actually there are times when you stand in a room and think, wow, actually, what am I doing here? And then you have to go back to what's my super strength? What can I bring to the table? So just because I'm with other people that actually feel a lot more senior, more skilled, more whatever than me, I'm here and I have got a superpower. And how do I bring that to the conversation?
Yeah.
So start to make sure that you're clearly in those scenarios, stay curious because you don't know everything. So you're going to learn something and then actually work through where is your superpower going to add value to the situation that you're in. And actually that will kind of grounds me a little because it kind of then goes, okay, yeah, I'm okay at that.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with that. And therefore I can own it more.
So if we can just change tacks just very slightly, what would you say was the most significant personal transformation that you've undergone? What did you learn through that? How did you go through it? And it doesn't, you don't have to go into loads of detail if you're not comfortable, but what's your most significant personal transformation and what did you learn from it?
The most significant transformation I went through was probably about 15 years ago. I got a coach and I thought, I really quite like this. And I put myself on a coaching course. Actually, I was sponsored to do it. My boss, one of my champions of the time said, I think you'd be great at that. Sponsored me to do it because I needed someone to go like that too, push me to that space. So I went on it and it was one of the most pivotal points in my life that I learned and started to value myself and started to recognize my superpower, started to recognize what I could do, started to practice. Actually, I could do anything.
Yeah.
Right. I could do anything. Why not?
Yeah.
Stop being limited by what I thought I could do, my negative kind of emotions that were almost stopping me from going, I can't do that. Well, I can't do that. I haven't done that. And actually thinking, well, what if? And that completely changed my outlook about myself. It changed my outlook about what my career journey could look like. It changed my outlook about other people and how I wanted to invest in them. And I think that has completely transformed how I lead as well.
Okay. How would you say it's differed if you reflect pre?
Probably because I'm more confident.
Okay.
As a result of doing that. I know what I can bring to somebody else. And I also know what they can be.
Okay.
So I know they can be more than what sometimes they present themselves as.
Yeah.
And it's just about unlocking it. And that I find super exciting.
It's almost like you've skill stacked, really, isn't it? You've done change for a long time. And now with your kind of ability to coach others, you can skill stack to achieve a better outcome, right?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, coaching helps definitely on obviously developing your teams, but it's also about developing those other teams that you're supporting through change as well. How are you coaching them to realize what the art of the possible is, how they are going to overcome the barriers that are going to be in the way, what their new roles could be like. So connecting all the things, it serves such a multi-layered set of purposes that it truly has been one of the things that's been a transformational investment, but also a journey.
Yeah.
And you say in your current role, that's something that you're looking to do. So is that a program? Is that just vocationally spotting people and going, you might benefit from that? Is it something, how would you put that together in a leadership role?
I guess the part of my role in the organisation will be to draw some of those things out as part of the program.
Yeah.
So there is an absolute ask to how do we get people ready, and that's a lot of that's mindset. Okay. So there will be definitely pieces of that are absolutely relevant to the work that we need to achieve. But equally, as a kind of line manager of people, that's just inbred in the way in which I want the team to develop. And then equally, just trying to think that more at a kind of a broader enterprise level. How can I contribute to other leaders in other functions as part and parcel of my day job that supports me coaching and being curious about other people, but also helps them too that are perhaps looking to develop or need mentors or need coaches that can essentially support their career journey.
And I guess reflecting on that from where you are now, are there things that you wish you'd have known earlier in your career that you think would have helped, or that I wish if I'd have known that would have been a real useful thing to have?
Things that I wish I had known is probably you can't do everything on your own.
Okay.
You need other people. So if you might be accountable for something.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own.
Yeah.
And many times I've sat there and thought, my goodness, I've gone down a rabbit hole, back up again and back down a rabbit hole of how the hell am I going to square this one off? And then I go, actually, there are sources of support out there and use them, because nobody really minds and nobody really expects you to do all of it on your own.
I'm not laughing. So we did a team raft building yesterday, and it's about using a resort. And so I can build this raft if it kills me. And we had the instructor there, and we were allowed to ask him 3 questions. And I was adamant we didn't need to use the questions because I could figure out how to tie this knot. And so everyone by the end of it is now stud. Well, I've got ropes over my shoulder, piece of trying to tie this raft. We don't need to ask this, but anyway, cut to 5 minutes later, we'd asked him. Within 5 minutes after that, the entire thing was suddenly cemented. So I'm with you on you cannot do it all on your own. Big lesson learned. Yes, it happened yesterday, so it was just quite funny that.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes are afraid to ask.
Yeah,
because it might appear that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that? Well,
what is wrong with that? We can't know everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you build connections with people. And actually at some point you'll be paying it back to someone else at some point.
Yeah.
It just means you need people at work and people around you in life that you can lean on and they can lean on you. And if you never ask or you never start that conversation, how will they ever know you're up for it?
So asking for help seems quite vulnerable in that sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And would you say that that's part of building trust?
Oh, absolutely. I think showing people that you're human is massive. If you don't do that, then everybody thinks that you have all the answer. No, at some point, I'm really going to disappoint you. So I might as well be upfront and tell you I don't have all the answers, but collectively we do.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. So we always get to this point when we have these conversations. And again, can you remember a time when you realized that it's okay to fail in your career?
I think it was when I was doing ropes on my own.
Okay.
I think it's two things really. First, when I'm trying to do something and I've spent oodles of time doing something, only to then go, ta-da, and it's not what people thought, because I've done it on my own, done it in a dark cupboard on my own, and then actually revealed it, and it's not. There's nothing more soul destroying than that, actually, because you think I've invested so much time and effort and energy in that, and it's fallen flat. And I think the other part for me about failure is when I've actually not focused on me first, and have therefore been everything to everybody, but actually not done the things that I needed to do. And that was a bit of a wake-up call, because I've been busy.
Yeah.
But being a busy fool.
Right.
So actually supporting everyone else and getting them to what they needed to do, but actually not really standing back and thinking, am I doing what's expected of me right now? So there was a big lesson through some of that work that actually made me kind of say, actually, what's on my pad? And how do I balance that properly? And there's, if you're a people person, there is you are at risk of being a people pleaser. And therefore, when someone asks, I must drop everything and I must do what they ask because that is a good human citizen. And actually, the right thing is to say, it's not now. I can't get to it now. And being able to say that took me a while to practice, but actually was empowering to do when I finally managed to make that happen, because effectively then I could preserve my own time.
And what is the balance between, it's not my job, right? Because I think we all fight against that so we all have a limited pool of time. And without not necessarily being a people pleaser, but, wanting to preserve your own time and be focused on the things that are priority to you in your career, in your role, what do you think is the balance between not coming off as somebody who just says, that's not my job, I'm only going to do that, and somebody who sets those boundaries in a way that doesn't give off that impression? Do you see what I'm trying to ask? I think
there's a difference between giving people a steer and then or rolling up your sleeves and doing it with them. I was doing the latter. And actually what I really needed to do is go, actually, so if you're stuck here, why don't you do X, Y, Z, then come back to me if you're stuck, if you can't find the way forward. So it wasn't saying, no, sorry, I'm busy. It was going, I'd suggest you do this because the work they need to go ahead and still do that. So I suggest you go away and do this. That's where I would start. And once you've done that, that should open the way for you. And if it doesn't, then come back to me. It gave them enough to go off and do something. So they weren't stuck. They were moving, and hopefully moving in a direction that was helpful to them, but equally didn't take me a huge amount of my time to be able to do it.
So I think as somebody who works in change, you have the vision, you have the plan, you have the strategy. Sometimes I think it can be tempting to help the teams on a practical level, as in, well, here's one I did earlier, just do this, especially because everybody's really busy during that time. Change is a very disruptive time for everyone, right? How do you balance between that kind of, here's a template, go off and just do that, and how do you balance bringing people round to doing it themselves, to being really excited about them?
I struggle with this on two levels, really. The first is I like getting in a room and using a whiteboard. And those that know me will be laughing because they'll go, actually, gosh, she's got that pen again. So it's something I like doing. So therefore, is this trade-off between, I really want to do that because I like doing it.
Yeah.
And actually I haven't got time to do it.
Yeah.
But I think so that's the first thing. So actually sometimes I'm coming uninvited. I'm rocking up uninvited. Gosh, they've got a whiteboard, I've got a pen, let's go.
Right? A whiteboard. It sounds like my kind of party.
Exactly. So it's not actually, I'm not always invited, but actually, and if I'm not, I try to carve myself an invite. So that's something that's a personal thing that I know I've got to restrain a little. But the second thing for me is about how do I get them to do it themselves? So I had this situation quite recently, actually, where I want it to look like this. I had in my mind's eye, I knew exactly how I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And of course, when they drew it up, it didn't look like that.
Yeah.
To every inch of my body to say, it's lovely. It's lovely. And then I thought, well, I've just got to check, has it got what it needs?
Yeah.
And actually come back to, is it serving the purpose
Yeah.
that it's intended to do? And actually, where I could have spent ages going, well, this would be great if it was yellow. That actually wasn't going to be helpful, but much more about, okay, so the purpose of this is to elicit what?
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable that it does that job, then it's done.
Yeah.
Right? And we can sit and finesse it and play with the colours and actually how it looks on the page. But the reality of it, if it does the job, it's good enough. And now that might jar with me personally, because I go, I would love to tinker with that and play with it, change the font. But actually, I'm kind of learning. So they're two sort of almost my own personal demons, if you like.
Yeah.
To keep in check. How do I not join a party that I'm not invited to? I'm really not needed at. And how do I make sure I don't tinker with something that is beyond all to transform it beyond all recognition of what somebody started?
Yeah. Because I'm a, sleeves roller upper but it comes more from a place of, I'll save you time. And that's part of my role at the moment. It's kind of, I go in as an additional person to help scale these changes and to move them at pace as an extra pair of hands. So I am an extra pair of hands, but I don't know if I could, I think it would take a huge amount of restraint to just step back and, lead people through it, if that makes sense. I'm sort of like, here's a starter for 10, go.
Yeah.
Because I find that that's the quickest way.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No.
And it's a constant check-in. Am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing this? You almost need to kind of go, actually, and, because I'm new to role, I'm almost at every meeting that there is. And there is a real risk that I could just stay in that cohort and just continue to be there and go, I'm adding value. So I might as well stay. But I'm having to kind of really think about am I really needed here? Is somebody else needed here? Do I need to extract myself from this? Because whilst I can add value to it, we can all add value to everything if we're in the subject for long enough.
Yeah.
But should I be in it?
Should I be in? I think that's a really key question, because when there is a transformation or a change program happening, and there is so much uncertainty in terms of the journey that we're going on together, what's going to happen at the end of that journey? There's, people always have questions. Where is my place?
Yeah.
Will I still be relevant? That is one key concern. Actually, people stepping back and saying, am I adding value? Do I need to be the one that adds the value here? Am I responsible? What is my remit? I think those are really good questions for anybody who is part of a change program, whether you're leading it or not, to ask themselves, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's a tendency as well to think that you need every bit of knowledge in the room all the time.
Yeah.
And how do you step out and go, when you're talking about this subject, let me know.
Yeah.
Because that's when I need to be involved. But right now, I perhaps don't need to be at every session, because time's precious and everybody will take part of your diary if you allow them to do that. So you have to be a little selfish and to be able to preserve the right headspace for you thinking.
I was thinking as we sort of come to the final bit, the future. So what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about what the capabilities are out there and technologies and what they can do. but I'm more excited about the intersection with
Okay.
what that means for humans.
Mm.
And actually, how do we almost transform what service looks like through some of the technologies that are available to us? I think it will absolutely give us space to be more personal, really kind of make people feel as if the service that we're offering is unique, is different, is relevant to them. We have a worry bead that I think we need to be mindful of, is that we don't use the capability to drive everybody towards the same experience and the same path. If we can tap into people's uniqueness and what they need and be able to serve things slightly differently, I think that will be a really great place to be. And actually, for people that are frontline, love speaking to customers,
Yeah.
it's a great time because you're going to do less processing of things and more of what you're great at, which is talking to people or interacting with people and solving their problems.
And in the context of that big shift, what onus do you think there is on business from a social responsibility, from a sustainability perspective?
I think it's probably about making sure we think about diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Kind of different, what making sure that we design things that are right for everybody, that we're inclusive in our thinking about all our parts of our society, and how do we design right for that, and how do we serve right for that. That's a part that would interest me most.
It's interesting. I normally sum these things up, but the thing that I wrote down a second ago was like, it's so obvious that you love the customer.
Yeah.
It's so obvious that you put the customer at the heart of the decision making. And I think going back an hour, like, to actually go and ask them, what's your experience? How do you navigate this? I think that in some ways, as long as you ask enough customers and the sample size, but that's how you then ensure that what goes back into the design goes back into the product roadmap. That ensures that diversity. And then I guess, in my opinion, it's incumbent on the business to make sure that at each of those different points, you then have diversity of thought, of people, of experience, of background to help inform at each of the different stages. But as long as you're asking enough customers, in theory, that should inform it all the way through, because to satisfy those needs, you'll need all those different people. So I don't know if you'd agree.
20 years ago, my boss at the time said to me, I was that person going, I don't know enough about process, or I don't know about projects. I don't know anything about this. I'd come back from maternity leave, didn't want the job that was on offer, and said, actually, I was a trainer before that, right? So didn't want to do that, and said, well, actually, I don't want to do that. She went, why don't you do this?
Yeah.
It's project work. I was like, I don't know anything about it. She went, all you have to do is pretend is be the customer. All you have to do is have an outside-in perspective. And actually, gosh, whenever I'm stuck, I just go to that line.
Yeah, brilliant advice.
Actually, and I thought, actually, because we all know what it feels like to be one of those. And so it's been really valuable to just make sure that, but actually what we're not doing is thinking, for me, is making sure that just because that's what I'm like as a customer, that's not what everybody's like as a customer, and that's not what everybody needs. So now it's, how do we bring all of that thinking into it, where we've got space and capacity to do that and manage that in a different way, because the technology is taking over some of the more mundane activity that you might need to do.
Yeah, it frees you up to think more creatively.
And obviously that intersection where there's such a big transformation, because if you were earlier on in your career or thinking about the world of work, how would you best prepare yourself? The question is, how would you future-proof your career? I think that's an incredibly big question, but what kind of thing would you be thinking about if you were there, based on the perspective that you've got looking at it?
Just get involved in things.
Say yes.
Stand next to stuff that scares you. Just start to experience it. We're having this conversation just yesterday with somebody about, you can go away into a classroom and learn lots of things. Actually, the best experience your best learning will be when you're actually living that experience. And I think about my career and I think about, gosh, I never learned all those things
Yeah.
at the beginning. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have known what most of those kind of acronyms or kind of ologies actually meant. But the reality of it is, once you've done some of it and then you go back to it, so you complement the learning, once you've experienced something, brings a whole new meaning to it. You've got live examples to be able to reflect on. And I'm just about to embark on that myself. So having done lots of organizational design for many years, but with no real training, but just this is out what I know about the business. And I'm about to embark on that myself and go, right, now let's just overlay that with all the right kind of practices and making sure I'm doing that. So I don't think you ever stop learning. You just keep building experiences and then just keep topping it up with your learning.
From our perspective, I think the days of you must have this degree, you must have this accreditation, thinking 10 years ago, whether it's popular or not, Redbrook University for certain companies were a prerequisite. Certain qualifications for the architects were prerequisites. Certain for what's Prince 2, is it a framework or a method or whatever it is for project managers were mandatory. I can't remember the last time I come with a client that said they must have been to uni, they must have this degree, or they must have this accreditation. Like, what have they done? What have they done? Who have they been around?
Job descriptions still say that.
They do.
Yeah.
We rewrite them often enough.
Actually, you kind of go, the job description is still saying that. And I think that is off-putting to
totally
people.
Agree.
So actually, I guess that's the other piece then. If you're young and ambitious and you're looking for something, don't be put off because you haven't got all of the things that you need on the CV. Because actually your experience will count for much more than some of those things will.
And there's huge stats around BAME versus female versus male application. Yeah. And I think it's males about 30-40%, and they're happy to apply. Females about 60-70%. BAME is almost 90%.
Is this where you are? If
criteria,
so if you X%, then you go, oh no, I'm not doing it.
And actually, from our perspective, when we speak to the client, it's so much less. It's like, what have they done? Who are they as a person? But especially in certain disciplines. Okay, if you're going into coding as a senior, you have to be able to code in that language. There is an experience, not necessarily where you learnt the coding. It's about the quality of the code that you're producing. If you're going into a UX or a creative position, talk about what they've designed, what they've produced, what they're capable of, who they are. Are they going to fit in with the team? Are they going to add something? Do they understand the customer? It's all of those sorts of questions. Is it ever? I was going to say it's very nearly never. It might not be ever. It's certainly not this year we've ever had anyone say they need this qualification, need this experience. Bit of sector experience sometimes, depending on the role, can understand that. But 90% of it's about the person.
I think as leaders, we have to make sure we're writing job profiles.
I think this is a pod on its own because there is so much. Yeah.
That says exactly what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Not the things that they might have to touch once.
Yeah.
So get into the core of the job and making sure it's not so broad that it becomes an impossible ask because you're looking for the superhuman.
And I think this is a little bit more on the client side, I don't know if you'd agree, but making it easier for people to apply. So I don't know if in previous roles you've actually been through the application process to apply for jobs that you've hired. Because we do that with clients live when we go and see them, and they're mesmerised by how difficult it is to. And so when you look at the click-through rate, it's like, well, we have 100 people click on learn more and we have 20 apply. Like, how are we losing 80%? Like, well, do it. And then it's like, well, the one click on LinkedIn or whatever platform, then you've got to re-put all the information. No. Yeah. It's the barriers to entry are too high.
Yeah.
Earlier on, say yes, apply more, get involved. I could really go on.
Should we just do a podcast on you and your bugbears around applying for jobs? Yeah.
Well, it's just so much that you could do to change that.
Okay. So, I mean, thank you so much for being with us here today. My key takeaway is that, collaboration is a huge part of delivering change successfully and being customer focused. So identifying your customer and their needs, but actually that how a customer might consume something will differ. This is why you need to have lots of different brains in the room to think all of that through and to be able to design the best outcome for the customer from lots of different perspectives. If you just do it on your own, you're probably not going to be very successful. And also the other thing that I took away was the importance of coaching yourself, coaching others through it, coaching and mentorship, really, growing, using those skills to grow as a leader, as a person, within a context of a network that can give you balanced and good feedback and help you to grow. So thank you so much. Will, do you have any?
Thank you again. Because it's the second time.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Thanks for having me back.
I just think we could have absolutely. I wrote time, empowerment, and customer, and I think understanding how busy and how critical your time is, and then actually when we're talking about going to things and why do I have a platform to speak about that? And actually, it's because of the time that you've put into it, and actually how valuable your time is. And I think the paying it forward or paying it back, making sure that you leave those doors open, and I particularly liked the thing around leaders. It's your responsibility to take those learnings and encourage others, and the value that you've seen from it. I think in change, the customer's king. In fact, I'd say in business, the customer's king, and just never losing sight of that. And I think you can clearly see, from it's been a wicked conversation, but that's very clearly not your slogan written on a wall. That's clearly who you are. And I think that's really inspirational. And for all of the things that we were sort of closing on, it gives us the best possible chance to have the most inclusive, sustainable, future-proof organizations that we can, and then empowering. And I think the responsibility to empower others, to, I was sort of talking about the rope, but to give people time, to let them learn, to let them fail, maybe in a controlled way, do 1, 2, 3, and then come back. I thought that was super useful to me. Hope it's useful to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
What a great conversation.
See you next time.